Hello, Millie. I'm like, I'm not opening that or shutting off the music until Millie gets here. Millie's here. Hey, Millie.
Hey, Jen. Hey, everyone.
So Millie and I decided to open up a space since Diligent had to drop off since he was going into the Trump rally. And yeah, I decided I'd just do the title once we got in here. I just wanted to open it up with something, Millie. So
yeah, so Jen, if you want to kind of set the stage by talking about the latest story of the reports, the reports of explosives at the Trump rally that have now been confirmed that there weren't actually explosives at the Trump rally. I'm hearing that it was a bomb sniffing dog that falsely alerted. Are you hearing that as well?
So I haven't heard that. The last I heard was that because when I first got into the space, I had a bunch of people like send me like, oh, there's explosives at the Trump rally. And I saw Diligent was live. So I expected like when I got in there that there would be, kind of like chaos and like everybody's scrambling. And when I got in there, it was just a normal Trump rally with everybody in line. And I'm like, this is so weird. And they're like, oh, well, it wasn't even real. And I was like, well, wait a second. Then, so they just put that out willy-nilly saying, oh, there was a bomb like alert at the Trump rally. Everything's good though. Again, like how do, if it was, if they thought it was enough to put it out to the media that there was a bomb threat, like how did they negate that so fast and what actually happened? But I hadn't heard that it was a false alert, Millie.
Yeah, I'm hearing reports, and there might be conflicting reports. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting, but as we're finding out more, like I recently read that it said that they essentially it was a bomb sniffing dog that falsely alerted, and they're interviewing the trainer of the dog. That's what I'm hearing right now.
Dude, that's crazy. That's what? Like sometimes it's just, I don't even know. You don't want to go always conspiratorial, but like really, how do these always, everybody else's rallies happen without a hitch? Everybody else can just have a normal rally, but no, we get fake bomb sniffing dogs? Like what?
Right. So I'm going to have to look more into it just to kind of confirm it. Like I said, there's a lot coming out. Did you hear they were talking about that explosives were found by police near a car or something? Isn't that what the initial reports were?
Yeah, they said that they found explosive devices in a car. And that's why I was so shocked when I got into the space with Diligent that like everybody was just normal. So if you found explosives out of rally, right? Even if you say, oh, we have one car, we got it. Like, how do you know when all of those people at that rally probably drove themselves there? So there's thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, I don't know, of cars there. Like how did you know that it was only a single car and you were just like, oh, no more bomb threat, go about your life, like have a great day, right? And if it wasn't that significant of a threat, then why was it put out over the news waves to, like, that's why I thought like they didn't want that rally to have a lot of people at it, right? Because if you're on your way to the rally and all of a sudden, they're saying that they're finding explosive devices in cars, right? Like, I don't understand. And wouldn't that information be coming from Secret Service, right? Because Secret Service supersedes any other law enforcement there. They're the ones in charge. So was it Secret Service who put out the alert that there was explosives, or who willy-nilly went to the media and said that there was explosive devices?
Yeah, I mean that's the good question right there. But you know what? Look, aside from the situation here, and we can kind of right now either way we could say, okay, maybe this is a coincidence, maybe this is just something that happened. But it's hard to believe that when we've seen it in the picture with all of the threats, harassment, and intimidation that we've seen the Democrats trying to wage against Trump and his supporters. And this is how the left operates. Really and truly, it's how they operate. And they do talk, like when I infiltrated the leftist affinity groups, when they would talk amongst each other about successfully preventing and deterring Trump supporters from holding rallies, the whole point behind them going out there in like all black attire with their face covered and go physically assault Trump supporters is to make it so they don't feel safe coming out and protesting or being in a group anymore. It quite literally is the definition of terrorism. It's to make them feel scared into not being able to protest, not being able to hold free speech rallies, not being able to assemble, right? Like that's the point, is to make them fearful of assembling. And that's why the Antifa goons would be sent out, was to physically assault people, create fights, create problems, and make it so that it's a high risk endeavor so that the majority of the people will just stay home, right? And so if you think of what's happening with the Trump rallies, Trump was shot at. You had a rally goer that was killed during the assassination attempt. Others were seriously injured. And so, yeah, I mean, they're trying to turn going to a Trump rally into a high risk activity. And they're trying to fear monger, like, oh my gosh, there's explosives 1 minute. And then the next minute they'll say, oh, no, it's not. Right. But the idea is to continually create this like state of trauma, fear, and to make it perceived as a high risk thing so that most people will just stay home and won't go. That's what they're trying to do. And it fits their narrative so that they can then use that and say, look, Trump's rally size, his rally sizes aren't as big, right? And you'll see the little leftist operatives out there. They'll post these little video clips, and maybe they go there and they film before like the full amount of people have filled in the seats, because they're still like loading in at the door. Maybe they're doing increased security checks because, hey, never know if someone's got a gun. And so that they'll film and they'll go, oh, look, there's not that many people here. Trump's losing support. And they'll use that to try to paint the picture and the image that he's losing support, so that then when it comes time to fixing the election and rigging and stealing it, which I'm fully 100% convinced they're going to do in 2024, then it's easier to create the psyop that Kamala won and Trump's just a sore loser, right? Like that's the psyop that they want to create. And that's the main thing. Like when members of our own intelligence community, CIA, would go overseas and fix and rig elections in other foreign countries, there was essentially two components to that. There was the component of actually fixing it, like fixing, rigging the election, stealing it. And then the other second component, which was just as important, if not even more important, was the PSYOP component, which was making sure that the public actually believed and accepted those results. So there's two things that are completely important if you're going to pull off a stolen election. So the problem here, and why I could see there being an agenda to try to scare Trump supporters away from going to the Trump rallies with these constant threats and assassination attempts, is to give the appearance that Trump is losing support while giving the false impression that Kamala is picking up all this momentum. Look, Kamala's filled up this giant stadium of people, this huge concert venue full of people's here for Kamala. No, they're actually there for a rapper. And then they wheel her butt up on the stage to twerk a little bit and then to say, oh, this is a Kamala Harris rally. This is what it is. When the reality is the majority of the people are going there to see the famous celebrity. And they did that with Hillary Clinton. I was covering it in 2016. Where they did the exact same thing with the Jay-Z and Beyonce rally or concert, and they turned it into a Kamala Harris speaking event or rally. And when in reality, the people there didn't give a crap that Hillary was on the stage. They just wanted to sing and dance to the songs that were going to be performed by those hip hop and rap artists. Okay. They were there for the celebrities. They were not there for the politician. And that's what they do. It's about creating an appearance. That's all it is. They have to they have to create the appearance that it's going to be possible. And that was the problem during the pandemic, which I think, part of the reason why they had Biden, I think that they were really struggling to try to get any enthusiasm for Biden. And so lo and behold, there was conveniently a pandemic which caused shutdowns. Oh, I guess no one can hold a political rally. Trump can't hold political rallies, and Biden definitely can't, right? Because, his Democrats and stuff were all for the fact that he wasn't going to hold any, speaking events or rallies, or even if he did, they were going to have to social distance and wear some crazy tampons or pads on their faces or whatever the hell they're going to do. But this is what I'm talking about, is they have to fit the narrative into their little slots. And you notice that with anyone who's running a freaking scam or a lie or a deception, they have to match the nodes to track with whatever their lie is. So they're going to have to make that believable when they try to steal it with their ballot ops. And there's plenty of evidence I could get into a little bit later, but I want to hear from Jen also. Looks like Dustin's in here. I don't know if Dustin wants to speak. But yeah, I mean, this is what we're dealing with. There's tons of evidence that they're already registering a bunch of illegal immigrants in swing states to vote, which, hey, I have the question as to, is that why these Haitians are getting the fast track for their driver's licenses? Because a lot of the registrations are happening at the DMV, or in Ohio, it's the BMV. And it makes you really, truly wonder what the agenda is here by trying to hurry these people up into getting driver's license before passing tests right before the election. So, Jen?
Yeah, I'm here, Millie. Sorry, doing laundry. Of course, always doing laundry. I swear to God. Yeah. So, Millie, I actually just found out that I actually have to leave for the afternoon, and I need to get ready right away. So I might have to shut down here in a few minutes. But you're totally spot on. And Millie, I wanted to bring this up to you. Something that I realized that's been really bothering me is the fact that BlackRock, right, went around after East Palestine, over the past 2 years, buying up all of these single family homes, right? And everyone's like, why is this company going around and buying up millions of single family homes all over the country? That's weird, right? And then all of a sudden, we have millions of freaking illegal aliens in this country who need housing. And then they're passing laws that the illegal immigrants are in California, at least, getting the benefits of being a first-time home buyer. Do you think that's I don't know, connected at all?
I mean, absolutely. This whole thing, what's happening right now is the collapse and the destruction of our country. They're trying to collapse and destroy it. Because none of these policies, none of this is actually going to be to the benefit of the American people. It isn't to our economy. It's like they're breaking the back of the American economy and the American people to further try to subjugate us. And partially, I think it's because they want to create a larger, lower class to get more Democrat voters. Like, there's ways that they can try to create Democrat voters by making people in a poverty mindset and a mindset of dependence, right? Like, you dependent on needing essentially, if they can put you in the breadline, they've got you under. They've got you under their control, and they've got you dependent upon them, right? So I think there's a certain amount where they're like, oh, you guys think you want your populist leader, Trump, you want your freedom, you want your rights, you want to essentially buck the system. Well, the system is going to buck you back by breaking your back financially and trying to essentially force subjugate you, censor you, police you. And this is the elite's way of forcefully trying to submit the American people back under their thumb and under their will, all the while using the other half or so of our population, which it could even be less than half for sure, but like the other component of our population that is not as educated or hip to what's happening. They aren't bothering to research the fact, look into facts to actually get to the bottom of what's happening. So they just mindlessly eat up the lies and the psyop and the propaganda, and in a way, they become weaponized. And the powers that be are able to weaponize these people, utilizing their propaganda against their fellow American citizens that actually do have their best interest at heart, while those who are in power are just trying to maintain power and dominance. And so this is how they divide and conquer, and this is how they keep us under their control. And they try to quell any type of uprisings of the people, because the people are fed up with being poisoned, having their rights taken from them. It's like, for the longest time, the talk amongst like the powers that be and the elites was, it's treating us all like chattel, right? We're their chattel, we're their sheeps. And essentially what they would do is they used to shear the sheep, which was allow the sheep to live peacefully, let them graze, let them, populate, let them be, right? And then you bring them in and you shear them, and you let them continue to do that. But now they're at the point where they want to just keep taking and taking and taking from us, where they're shaving us completely bald. We are being shaved. And that's why there's that term that says shear, don't shave, because they've shaved us so dry that we're like a bunch of starved, shaking, bald sheep creatures that are living miserable quality of lives. And we're like, wanting to look for the escape essentially and get the hell out of this pasture that they've allowed to go barren. And then we're looking and going, oh, look, they're bringing in these other sheep from other countries, infested with other diseases and other problems. And they are feeding them more, and they're taking more care of them, but they're still neglecting the sheep. It's because they're probably just going to lead us all to slaughter or something like that. I don't know. They've got some other plan for us, and it isn't good. And all I have to say is I'm sick and tired of it. And I know there's a lot of Americans out there who are sick and tired of it as well. These people who are in power have got to go. They have to be removed from power because this is not right what they're doing to our country. And I think enough people will wake up and they'll choose to make a difference. That's all we can hope for, is that we can wake up enough people in time. And Trump has been amazing for waking people up. If there's anything, like, people, even I know conservatives sometimes have their critiques with Trump, that, oh, he puts his foot in his mouth, or he does this, that, and the other, and sure, whatever. But you know what he has done? He's woken people up like crazy to the fact that we have a dishonest media. And that is invaluable, because that is like the single point of failure in our country right now, is the fact that we have a lying mainstream media. Because how are the people expected to make proper decisions, such as deciding who to vote for in an election, decisions about their country's well-being, decisions about their food, their environment, their schools, their future for their children? How are you supposed to make any judgment call or decision if you don't actually have accurate, truthful information to base it on? And that's why I say the mainstream media is the single point of failure right now in our country, is because they choose to willingly lie to the people and deceive the people because they're bought out by corporate interests. Hello, Diligent. Are you inside the Trump rally? Good to see you in here.
He might not be able to talk at the moment. Cheryl,
Okay.
Cheryl, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing really well. I caught what you were saying about voter registrations. You said something about that a little bit earlier, and voting. And here's what I want to say. There's two things that every patriot in America can do today that will matter. The swing states are really important. And right now in Pennsylvania, in Luzerne County, there are thousands of unprocessed voter registrations in that county. Those people will not be able to vote if those registrations are not processed. And there are people that have not been processed that registered as far back as June. So every human listening now who has friends, whatever, you can call the Luzerne County Board of Elections and make sure that they get on the ball. And the second thing I just wanted to bring up is they're definitely trying to steal this election. In Wisconsin, I just want you to know, I took this data from the Wisconsin Election Board site and the U.S. Census. In the U.S. Census, 1,050,008 adults aged 65 and older. Now, granted, that was 2020, okay? No, that's the number that are registered to vote. It's more than the people in 2020 in that age group. There were only 1,037,620 adults. So you say, oh, well, that's only 13,000 or so. No, that's way more than that. The national average of registered people versus number of population is 69%. So in Wisconsin, there is a potential of 300,000 to 400,000 not legitimate registrations only in that category of 65 and greater. And so I would just urge everyone to get on the phone. Whatever state you're in, your election also, the election for your president hinges on these swing states. I'm in Tennessee, we're going to go Trump, but I just wanted that data out there, and I will yield the floor.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Cheryl.
Go ahead, Millie. I'm running around here trying to get ready.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you were going to say something. Thank you for that, Cheryl. There are things that we can be doing right now to address the upcoming election. And you know what, even more so, the Republican Party the conservative movement could be doing to address this upcoming election. And this is the problem I have. I've seen millions and millions of dollars thrown into these election integrity research projects run by a bunch of former intelligence contractors. I've seen all of this millions and millions of dollars thrown into these talking head pundits that will just stand there and parrot narratives and talk out politics and essentially grift. And that's pretty much what I've seen in the conservative movement as far as like preparing for the election and trying to address the problems at hand with the election. And the problem with the millions of dollars that have been thrown into the election integrity investigations run by intelligence contractors is it hasn't amounted in a damn thing. Like it really hasn't. And the problem being, there's so much locked up with the machines and, we don't get to look at the code. It's proprietary and this, that, and the other. When all the while, this material that I've had by infiltrating the leftist affinity groups back in, I obtained the material in the months leading up to the election in 2020. That material has been in hand, and I've tried to disseminate it to pretty much many of the Republicans in Congress, the people who were running the little election integrity investigation contractor teams and stuff. And the problem is what I have, it actually shows that the majority of the fraud was via the ballots. It was mail-in ballots. And so the problem was everyone went down the path of the electronic voting machines, and no one was really able to definitively do much with that. They got sued. That's what they successfully got done, is I guess they accomplished getting many of these people like Fox News and others sued. But the reality is there are things that can be done investigating the groups, the NGOs, the network of NGOs who have been ballot harvesting, who had literally a document like the count that was pre-planning J6 in advance, as well as the fact that they knew in advance that Trump was going to be leading by the end of the night. And then by the time everyone woke up in the morning, that it was going to be Joe Biden who was going to be winning because of the flood of Democrat mail-in ballots that were going to come in, and he was going to win. And then they knew in advance that Trump was going to contest it. So they had a whole honeypot trap planned for him that they had in store as well. And then they even had these prosecutors and people lined up in advance ready to essentially prosecute and go after him. This whole thing was completely orchestrated by a corrupt group of people. And I cannot understate that. I literally have receipts on this stuff, guys. Okay. And it's more and more coming out, and you see that the group of people who are still even today shilling for Kamala Harris, like the debate moderator, for example, the lady who was giving Kamala Harris the softball questions. She's a sorority sister with Kamala Harris in the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, which is one of the 9 divine Black fraternal and sorority organizations out of Georgia, that literally these grassroots election freaking ballot harvester groups that I've been monitoring for the past however many years that were connected into these leftists. Okay, their documents were inside of the Movement Resources Hub that I had accessed, being distributed around. They're in each other's network, working together, working with Sunrise, working with Shutdown, working with all of them, right? That group of people, literally, I can't underestimate, they were literally working with the 9 divine sororities and fraternities to essentially target inactive Black voters in Georgia in order to get people registered to get the ballots that they needed by precinct, by county, and they were keeping track of the exact amount and number that they needed in those areas. And the idea being, look, it's about getting the registrations more than anything. Once you have the registration, it doesn't matter if somebody goes and actually votes. It's about registrations and getting mail-in ballots sent out. Then you can have people retrieving ballots and getting them to the drop boxes. Do you understand? So the problem I'm having with this whole thing is like, dude, I'm not seeing anyone on the conservative side doing anything about investigating these people. They don't even want to investigate the stuff I put out with the federal government Marxists that are outright committing crimes on camera, talking about how they've subverted the U.S. government, subverted the president. They're committing Hatch Act violations on camera. They're committing crimes of subversion on camera, borderlining even with treason, right? And yet not even an investigation. So the problem is our Congress is freaking corrupt. Our Congress is literally compromised. And so do I think there's going to be anything different this time around? You'd have to be crazy, especially when they've got Kamala Harris's sorority sister up there in the debate giving her softball questions. And that same sorority has fully backed Kamala Harris publicly in a public press release and created a PAC and have already raised millions of dollars to start pushing and doing their get out the vote operations on her behalf. Guys, the fix is in. They're going to do it again. They're going to try to do it with the ballots. And they have the upper hand because this time around, they've got Biden and Kamala as, you know, in the White House. They have the Democrats having the Senate. And the only thing that the conservatives have as any checks and balance is Speaker Mike Johnson and the corrupted Republicans in the House that have not done a damn thing to investigate any of these NGOs and groups that stole it the last time around. So I hate to be a Debbie Downer or rain on anyone's parade here, but there's going to have to be a God-sized miracle in 2024 for Trump to essentially be in the White House inaugurated in January 2025. There's going to have to be a God-sized miracle because like nothing is being done to address the groups and the NGOs that stole the election. Like people could actually there could be subpoenas on these organizations for some of their criminal activities. Like the Texas attorney generals could even do it in some instances. Like the state attorney generals could get jurisdiction and do subpoenas here, and they're literally just not doing it.
For sure, Millie. Hey, so Millie, Mike is going to co-host with you. Kim's here to help. I'll leave the space running, but I have a bunch of running around to do. So if you need me, just text me.
Okay, cool.
No problem,
Yeah,
Jen.
it looks like we've got some hands up. Go ahead, Robert.
Hello, I'm from the United Kingdom. I live in England. I've been following the American election, your election over in the States, and I have to say it's been, I wouldn't use these words lightly, talk about wild. Mike and I have been following the election, and I really hope that Trump wins. I think he's the better candidate. And I really do feel that I hope that Trump wins. I hope that you have that the election's a lot calmer than it has been. And I am very, very concerned that if you have another 4 years of the Democrats in the USA, I don't know what's going to happen. I really think that it's a very dire situation that you're in at the moment. And
okay, I cannot hear Robert. I don't know if you can hear him, Mike, but I cannot.
I can. We can drop.
Sorry, I'll speak. I'll speak up. Can you hear me now?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you. Okay, yeah, I can hear you now.
I said I'm from the United Kingdom. I'm from England, and I've been following your election with great interest. And I really hope that Trump wins. I feel that he's a better candidate. But I also do feel that he's got his work cut out. I think the Democrats are evil, and there's no other word for it. This would never happen in my country. We've had an election, but it's slightly different because we're not a federal republic. But I mean, I do feel that why there wasn't proper security for President Trump is beyond me. That would never happen over here. And I think the Democrats are up to the necks in it. I think if you have another 4 years of the Democrats, America will be in severe trouble. And I'm really hoping that Trump wins on the 5th of November. I think that he's a better candidate out of the two. I'm trying to listen to all the arguments, but I do really feel that that a lot of my UK friends aren't too keen on Trump, but they're not too keen on Harris either. And so it's very different over here in the UK. A public opinion is very, very one way or the other. So I'm really hoping that Trump does win. I think that I'm hoping that election day goes peacefully. I will be continuing to pray for your country because I think your country needs it.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Robert. All right. So, I mean, that's the thing. We hope that the elections can be free and fair. We hope that everything kind of goes down without any issue, right? And then let the American people decide, right? I think nobody has any issue with allowing the American people to decide who the president is. Most Americans all will be happy to accept the results in a free and fair election. My concern is essentially that our elections are no longer free and fair. Our elections are incredibly rigged. And no one in government has done anything to address the concerns that many Americans have about the validity and the transparency of our election process. And so, because we've made zero progress in that area, I think that we're doomed to fail to repeat another 2020 over again because we haven't made any progress with addressing those issues. It's all just been, people going back and forth talking about, you know what I mean? It's just these media hits and people talking and no one doing and no one actually subpoenaing, investigating. I know the Oversight Project has been actually doing FOIAs and getting a lot of stuff out for the people, and that's great. But it has to be more than that. There has to be many other groups of people preparing and working towards investigating what happened. And all of the investigations around 2020, most of the election integrity stuff was literally a bunch of former intelligence assets running it, which, you can question their motive, right? Because in that world, it becomes someone's a double agent or a triple agent, or they're like being paid off from other interests to like sabotage investigations. And you better believe all that stuff was going on. I actually have firsthand knowledge that shady stuff was going on amongst all of these election integrity investigations. So I know that little progress has been made, and so that's why I'm concerned. And when I see these same groups that played a huge role in 2020 continuing and only gaining momentum, gaining more funding, which they gained funding because Biden, via executive order, essentially funded and funneled taxpayer money into a bunch of these same NGOs for get out the vote operations. And these are groups that they call themselves, oh, we're nonpartisan, we're not biased, right? They say it, but it's really just so that they can have that 501c3 status, right? They don't want to have to be a C4 or anything else. They say it because it suits them to say it. But when you actually look into it and you see it's majority run by leftists that hate Trump. And then you look and you see under the hood, oh, these groups were working with the series of other left-wing protest groups that are actively working to protest against Trump and that hate conservatives and hate Trump and Trump supporters. So the problem is Biden just funneled millions of taxpayer dollars into these same NGOs so that they can make sure they reach voters with their get out the vote operations. But all they're doing is trying to target Democrat voters and demographics that are likely to turn up to vote for Democrats. So it's only going to be worse this time around because they have more money at their disposal than they did last time because Biden, via executive order, gave them this boost. So yeah, I guess we could go to Robbie.
Hey, thank you, Millie. I appreciate you bringing me up. I agree with you 100%. That's what I've been, yelling at the top of my lungs for the past few years now, where I've listened to people saying, it's got to be too big to rig. I'm like, yeah, that sounds good, but my background in cybersecurity and, some other things I've done, I'm pretty much a social engineer. Look, it doesn't matter. They can write a script, program those machines to do 5149. You can have 100,000, a million, 2 million. It doesn't matter. If the algorithm says give this candidate X 51 and candidate Y 49 out of the aggregate total of the votes, then that's what it's going to be. And you're right. The Republican Party has done little to zero to address this issue, which is the biggest pressing issue. And I'm looking at Trump and his campaign like, look, if it would have been me, I would have been like, look, man, forget all them lawyers. All right. You need to get together a really robust cyber team that's going to set up camp and be able to start sniffing packets when it starts, when the election day comes, so you can be on that shit firsthand. So, and not be, caught with your pants down and trying to prove stuff after the fact. You will get out in front of it so you can be able to jump on it right then and there and not be waiting around. Because what's going to happen with these lawyers? They're going to come with the same stuff that Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis came with, and they're going to say, you ain't got no standing. And we're going to be right back in the same boat. So I don't see how any of that's going to be of help. I don't really think the campaign has really been doing a great job this time around, just my personal opinion, because I'm thinking they're just got some blind spots that they really aren't taking serious. It's not, just going to register a whole bunch of people to vote. I mean, that's good. Yeah, that I'm sure that'll help in some ways. But yeah, it's the nefarious things that the left does, right? They'll tell you to follow the rules, but they're going to break every damn rule in the book. They don't even obey the law of gravity. You see what I'm saying? And you're going to have to pay people to go knock on doors. They ballot harvest, you go ballot harvest just as hard. They send out X amount of ballots, you send out X amount of ballots. You got to play their game, man, and you got to play it better. But the right doesn't want to do it like that. You see what I'm saying? They think they're going to go to these same judges that has struck down virtually every other voter integrity, bill that some state legislator has passed, and think that they're going to just, this time around, guys, it's going to work. They're going to do it. No, they're not, because they in on it too. So I'm right with you, Millie. I don't think, unless they really get serious about this stuff, putting digital signatures on ballots or, whatever the case may be, to really get down with integrity, hashing these ballots, because with a hash, it acts one way. And if it's altered, you'll be able to know it. See, they ain't doing none of this stuff, man. So I'll land there. Thanks for letting me speak.
Right. Thank you so much, Robbie. And you know what? No judge is going to want to be the one to single-handedly do a ruling that's going to change who the president is, right? Like, so even if you have a mountain of evidence, the judges are chickens. They aren't going to do anything. And the Democrats knew this. And in 2020, they knew it and they banked on it. And literally one of the things they said in the Zoom call when they were talking about this was, basically you want it to be where you have the ball in your court and they're the ones having to defend. They're the ones having to try to take it back from you. So the idea is that if they just steal it, then we have to try to sue in the courts to challenge it. Good luck. It's not going to happen. Good freaking luck. And they knew that going into it, that basically it's so much easier in that situation to just hold that position. And like I'm saying, like throughout their documentation, there were only a couple things that they had fears of that Trump could have done. But don't worry, they had their little intelligence assets placed around Trump, making sure things went the way they wanted to, right? Because like one of the things they said they were fearful of was if right after like the election night or the days following, that Trump would use his his power as president to seize these fraudulent mail-in ballots and start investigating for ballot fraud and investigating the Democrat Party for election fraud. They were afraid that he could seize and use Bill Barr to do that. And so that was one of their weak spots that they were afraid of, which in hindsight, if he did that, it makes you wonder what would they have actually captured? Because remember, it was a race to destroy the ballots after the election. How quickly these Democrats started shredding ballots, making these ballots disappear so that there couldn't even be audits. So there couldn't even be recounts and audits. That's what they did. They tried to destroy it as quickly as possible. So if he would have seized those and started investigating, what would have happened? I don't know, right? But I also know that what these groups have been talking about is they are fearful going forward in this election. One of the things that they're fearful of, and they've talked about at length, is Mike Johnson. So they're afraid because the conservatives have the House, and the Speaker of the House, in the event of a constitutional crisis or another contested election that's wrought with fraud, there's things the Speaker of the House can do to challenge. And what they're worried about with Mike Johnson is, according to them, they say that he played a big role in getting a lot of the other people previously in 2020 to agree to not accept the slates of electors for Biden. And remember when there were all those Republicans that kind of like lined up and were like, we're not going to accept this. We want investigations. Apparently, according to them, Mike Johnson played a role in that, a leadership role in that. And they're afraid with him being the Speaker of the House and Congress that even if they try to, do what they're going to do and steal it, he is one spot of resistance, and that could be a single point of failure for them, right? So what have they been trying to do? They've been trying to, if you've noticed, there's been a string of Republicans in the House that have just resigned. A lot of that stuff happened actually this past spring, where you saw these resignations. And hey, if enough of those resignations happen, which I would not put it past them to try to run some blackmail ops, whatever, to try to force Republicans out or into resignation so that they can maintain or gain the majority of the House and put Hakeem Jeffries in as Speaker of the House, which is what they would love to do, okay? Because the Republicans in the House right now have been the only reason that they also have failed to implement one other part of their plan for 2024, which was the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which was a bill that the Democrats have been trying to pass that's will literally change our elections forever. Like, it would be insane. it would pretty much federalize all the state elections, because in order to change your election laws in the state, you would have to petition the DC court, or I forget if it was the attorney general, but you would have to petition basically the federal government and get approval before changing and enacting new election laws in your state. And it would also federalize requirements for each state in their election. So it would, like, basically, one of the things that it had, which was very dangerous, was allowing voter registrations out of PO boxes. But they said, oh, this was to, help women that are victims of, domestic violence or assault or stalkers or whatever. When in reality, we all know that if you make it so that they can register someone to vote at a PO box, the amount of fraud that will subsequently follow with that law change will be off the charts. It'll be so much easier to be able to register people at PO boxes if you're in the ballot harvesting and hustling game. So there were a bunch of different laws that it would also curl back, because the GOP made a bunch of progress in regards to some swing states taking away the drop boxes, or some swing states requiring a type of voter ID, not like showing ID to vote, right? So some states had made some progress in those areas. And the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which the Democrats have been frothing at the mouth to pass, but have been met with resistance from the Republicans, that right there would really wreck things. So what they've shifted to is now they're trying to do it on a state-by-state basis and pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act into legislation on the state level. So now they're trying to get the state legislators to pass it instead of doing it in a federalized way. They'll have a different type of version of it at the state level, just to change and essentially force Democrat wants and needs for voting, right? Allowing these bogus vote in the park things, ample drop boxes for more fraud, extending mail-in ballot time periods, extending the voting time period to weeks after. So instead of just being election night, like all this stuff they want to do and like cement into our law is in that piece of legislation. So I highly recommend looking into it. It's really terrifying what they're trying to do. But yeah, I mean, this is what we're dealing with and what we're up against right now. And I've seen a little bit of progress here with the GOP in some of these states, trying to tighten up some of the requirements, which, yes, that does have these get out the vote groups on the Democrat NGO side on their heels a little bit. The other thing that has them on their heels a little bit is the fact that now they've seen more conservative Republicans signing up to become poll watchers and poll workers. It's not the poll watcher position that terrifies them. To be a GOP poll watcher or a GOP or a Democrat poll watcher basically means you're going to stand there and you're going to watch them count the ballots, and you're going to do it. And remember, last time they made you do it from a distance because of the COVID-19 pandemic, social distancing requirements that they had. But the position that they're afraid of is they are afraid of ordinary people that aren't part of their little network of their union conspiratorial people, okay, going up and signing to be poll workers. And I'm not talking about the kind at the strip club, okay? I'm talking about the kind that go and actually do the counting of the ballots and would be doing the adjudication of ballots, would be doing the recounts, okay? That's what they're afraid of. I've heard them in their Zooms and in their chats, fearful of all these MAGA extremists becoming poll workers and counting the ballots and watching them. That's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of people that would have eyes and ears to hear and to see, telling on them for the shady crap that they know they need to pull off. So, I have seen the GOP putting out a massive initiative to hire and recruit GOP poll watchers. But guess what I was told? And I'm not going to tell you who told me it because it was kind of told in a little bit of like, they didn't want to know, So what I was essentially explained to was that there was a lawsuit that happened, and this happened way back, and it was in California, and it had something to do with the GOP was accused of gerrymandering to some degree because people were, I don't remember exactly what they were doing, but it was in California, and there was a lawsuit, and the lawsuit resulted in the GOP getting sued. And as part of the settlement, the GOP had to agree to not try to hire and recruit poll workers to count the votes. And it was something where they weren't allowed to do it. They were barred from doing it because of the result of a settlement lawsuit. And this judge in California just kept renewing it. And this is why they couldn't do that. And then they said that what happened was more recently, it was actually pretty recently, it had been the last like 5 or 10 years, this judge died, and the judge missed the renewal on this. So for whatever reason, they're saying that now suddenly the GOP is going to be allowed to actually be allowed to find people to become poll workers and whatnot, whereas before they weren't allowed to actively recruit. So it's kind of one of those things where you have the Democrats out there massively funneling their people to count the ballots and be poll workers. And apparently, just according to the source that told me these things, that the GOP or the GOP RNC, whatever, was barred from doing it due to a lawsuit settlement out of California for some kind of harassment or gerrymandering of some sort. So that's interesting. It's an interesting thing here, but it just goes to show how afraid they are of regular Americans, signing up to be the ones counting the ballots. And this is why during the pandemic of COVID-19, they told everyone, stay home. Grandma, stay home. Used to be a lot of grandmas in a lot of towns around America that would go sign up because they had nothing better to do. Go sign up to become poll workers and go help count the votes on election day because it was their civic duty. And they just did it because it was their American civic duty. And a lot of those old people have died. And a lot of those old people aren't doing it anymore because they were all told, stay home. It's too risky during the COVID-19 pandemic. So all those old people stayed home. They didn't count the votes. They didn't do their civic duty. They abstained. But don't worry, they had an army of Democrat NGOs and unions ready to take charge and fill all of those positions. And they did. They funneled their union organizers and their
Well, Millie, can I just add? It wasn't just the COVID-19, right? Because you had the COVID-19, but then you had brave people who were like, oh, I don't care about COVID. I'm still going to do my duty. And then they started hyping up the rhetoric around the violence against poll workers and the threats to the polls and that kind of rhetoric to even more scare people if they weren't scared of COVID.
Yes. But ironically, they mostly have been accusing the poll watchers of the harassment. Remember, it was And this is what they like to do. They like to accuse the GOP poll watchers of harassing the election workers and the poll workers. And this is what they have in store. If you look on, check out, guys, like scour the heck out of the Brennan Center for Justice's website and all of their documents and things that they have on there. There's a document in there that they have up on their website, and it goes into depth where they're recommending state legislatures pass a series of laws and rules pertaining to the election, and the majority of it's surrounding protecting election workers and poll workers from poll watchers. So what it's going to pertain to, or first, is they're going to have all these protections and laws which they're trying to get passed on a state by state basis, probably mostly focusing on swing states, to try to make it so that it becomes like a federal crime or a felony or some crazy thing that they're trying to push for to harass an election official or to harass a poll worker. And I'm not sure what they would even include. Would that include the GOP poll watchers basically calling out a election worker for pulling ballots out of a freaking box under a table that's hidden? Like, would that, like, if somebody's pulling out ballots from a suitcase and the poll watchers are, going, hey, this doesn't look right, what the hell's going on here? Are they going to be charged for harassment? Is that one of the things they're trying to do here? I don't know. But I know that there is a full-on agenda from the Brennan Center for Justice to try to enact these really draconian voting laws that would go after anyone trying to essentially point out, question, and, essentially call attention to what's happening in that regard. So my whole thing is, well, then just become the poll watcher, right? Like,
I hate
if they're going to
cheaters.
be the ones with the protections, if the poll watcher is going to be the position to be, because they're going to be the one with the protections, right? So that's what I'm saying.
I mean, these people cheating, it makes me so mad. It just brings me back to my childhood and like kids that would like cut in line and they would cheat and they would, take extra, and then some kids wouldn't get stuff. Like, I cannot stand cheaters.
Yeah, no. And I think that's the main issue here is every time there's cheating, it's actually disenfranchising American voters. And that's the issue, is when you're cheating, when you're allowing fraud to happen, you're disenfranchising actual voters, the actual Americans who have a right. So go ahead, Sunny.
Hi. So I live in Wisconsin. I'm very speculative that they're going to cheat because I don't feel where I'm at. I'm in Dane County. It's really strong Democrat, but I feel no sense of like big changes. I mean, even when I talk to my Republican Party, I'm like, why aren't we having registration rallies, or stops, just to get people registered? And she's like, oh, just share them with the link. Like, we're not passing out forms. We're not hitting hard to get new voters. I don't see it. But this is my weird concern. I lived in this town 11 years, and there's always the sign with the population, and it changes every year. And every year it goes up between like maybe 500 to 800. Really weird. Just now, we went up by 4,000. Our population was only 12,000. So for us to go up by 4,000 is a huge amount. Like, I should be like, oh my God, we got 4 new neighborhoods or something crazy, because we have new neighborhoods several times over. Like every 4 years, a big subdivision come up, and that would be like an 800 push. But right now, for some weird reason, we have 4,000. So are people sharing their address for illegal voters? Like, where are these people? Because I don't see them, and I don't see a huge increase in population. And I know we have like some illegal immigrants, that kind of a push, but nothing huge, nothing crazy. But where's the 4,000 new people? And I'm wondering if that's how they're going to scam. They're creating that there's actually more people here than there really are. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I know that as far as what I looked into regarding the influx. Oh, hot mic. Deborah, your mic is hot. Okay. Yeah. So regarding the influx of migrants into the country, now we do know that it has been confirmed that there have been instances with these illegals being registered to vote. Okay, and they've already found that out, that that's happening in some places. However, I think the majority of the issue here is going to be redistricting, because the population size in cities and areas, that's what influences the districts for the voting. So what they can use is they can use those large, the sanctuary cities essentially can use the large increase in the population to try to redraw their lines for voting, the redistricting. And you do not have to be, I looked into it, you do not have to be an American, you do not have to be a registered voter or eligible to vote to be counted in the census, to be included for the redistricting purposes. So that is one way that the illegal immigrants coming into the country is essentially reshaping the landscape of our elections, so to speak. Go ahead, Angela.
I would really like to speak.
So,
Okay, we can't. Your audio, Deborah, is really horrible. I don't know if you can fix it, but if it's going to be with that crazy background noise, I don't think we're going to be able to have you speak on here. So if you can try to fix your microphone, I'll give you an opportunity to do that. Otherwise, I don't know if we're going to be able to have you speak because we can't even hear you and the background noise is too crazy. Go ahead, Angela.
So a couple things on that. One, with regard to how they're using the census, my husband saw that coming, and let's just say he responded as one individual in a household where there's many more. He decided to counter their game by neglecting people to be here where there are people here, because he knows that they're playing with the numbers. That was one. Two, when we talk about specifically the illegal vote, I'm going to be honest with you. I feel they're more likely setting up the names of these individuals to use them behind their backs. I've met a lot of legal immigrants over the years who are here with work visas and other. They wouldn't dare get caught voting. Like, they just didn't even with encouragement. And by the way, they were encouraged to sign up at the DMV when they were getting a driver's license. But they didn't want to get caught doing anything that would potentially revoke their status, right? Because they were here on legal green cards or work visas or others. So my thought is it just a setup by the Democratic Party to use their names to submit, and, the paper votes behind the scenes, or the extra votes that are going to come behind the scenes? I don't know. I'm just conjecturing on that.
That is a good question. And are they putting those people at risk by trying to register them to vote? Like, out of the people that they are registering, like, are they putting these people at
Millie,
risk?
you and I
of
don't.
getting
You
in
and I
trouble?
both know they don't really care about those people. They're using them, right?
Right. No, I know that, and I understand that. I'm just asking it in the way you would ask like a rhetorical question, right? So that's kind of how I'm doing it. But yeah, clearly it's clear that the people are being used and exploited, and it's really sad at the end of the day that this is what our country has come down to, is that the Democrat Party is trying to exploit people, and they usually are exploiting the most vulnerable populations to get their end means met at the end of the day. Absolutely. And this is the other thing. I really think there are things that we could do to try to mitigate some of the potential for election fraud. But all we see from the Democrat Party is that they want to continue to allow for all of these openings, all of these loopholes, all of these ways in which fraud can occur. They want to continue to allow for that to happen. And they use the exception to the rule, going, oh, well, what if somebody's too uneducated or doesn't know how to get an ID to vote, right? what if someone can't have an ID, which is pretty ludicrous to me, because in order to do almost anything in our country nowadays, you have to have an ID,
including picking
right?
up their check from, welfare office or other, right?
Right. In most instances, you have to have an ID. Like everywhere I go, I go to the doctors. They want to see my ID and scan it. I take my kids to the dentist. They want my ID. They want to scan it. Go to the library and get a library card recently. They wanted my ID and they wanted to scan it. Go to the airport, try to fly somewhere. They want my ID. I have to give my ID all the time for many things, and so it doesn't make sense to me that it's so outlandish to ask people to have an ID when they're voting, and which would literally cut down on a lot of the fraud that's happening. And so, obviously that's one thing that could happen, but clearly there must be some kind of reason why the Democrat Party wants to essentially keep that out of the law, right? They don't want people to essentially have to have an ID to vote. But then again, they wouldn't think twice about it if it was, you have to have an ID to have a gun, right? They want you to they want you to have to show ID and get a background check and all these other things to exercise your Second Amendment right. But yeah, no, you shouldn't have an ID to vote, right? Which is one of the most important things that we do as American citizens in this country, is we vote. And by making sure that we're legally voting, we're not disenfranchising other Americans who also have a right to vote as we do. So yeah, I mean, I see a couple people up on the stage. If anyone wants to chime in, what are your concerns going forward in the 2024 election? I think across the board, many of us are nervous about this upcoming election because we saw so much crazy happening with the 2020 election. We're worried that there may be fraud instances again. We're worried that there could be lawsuits filed subsequently, or people contesting election results, or anything. Like, what are your concerns for this upcoming election? Do we think we're going to go into another constitutional crisis? Do we think it's going to be close enough to where that would be an issue? I don't know. I want to hear from you guys up on the speaker panel.
I've corrected my audio. May I speak to that, please?
Yes, go ahead, Deborah. Thank you for fixing your audio.
Thank you for telling me I needed to. I pulled off the road. I am an election worker, an election inspector, and I also worked the census in 2020. I was at Washington, D.C. on January 6th, so I'm all in on this issue. I do know of a couple of ways to address a couple of the issues that you brought up. I saw somewhere where anyone in a swing precinct, like Warren, Michigan, or I am also in Michigan, by the way, but I'm in a very rural area and I'm an inspector in a real small precinct that I know had no fraud. If someone in those precincts filed a cease and desist order stating how illegal immigrants could be harmed if they vote, it's currently a federal law that if they vote, they are instantly deported. So if you file a cease and desist showing that they can be harmed by voting and requesting that elections are frozen until those election or those county clerks or precinct clerks clean those voter rolls of all illegal immigrants, then you might have standing to actually, they're being successful in a lot of precincts by showing that harm can be done to the illegal immigrants. But you also have to show during or in that cease and desist order how you are harmed. And to do that, you put like all the aid that the illegal immigrants are getting, you add that up and divide it by, all the people in the country. And I think it's something like, 100,000 per citizen at the moment that we are being harmed by this illegal immigration. And then you add up all the money that your county is giving to illegal immigrants, and you divide that by your county population, and then your township, how many immigrants in your township, add up all that, divide it by your township, add it all up to show how you are being harmed financially, and file that with the courts ASAP so that there is ample time for the county clerks to clean those voter rolls, then we might be able to get the illegal immigrants to stop voting, especially in those precincts where there was obviously fraud. I mean, rampant fraud in 2020. And the thing that you said about being election workers, that's so key. We need people in those same precincts to get hired on. And what's horrible about the GOP recruiting is the GOP has no authority to hire anybody. They can get them trained, but then they can just refer them to those precincts, and like the county clerk has to do the hiring, which was how I got on. There was some internet push to get people trained and registered as poll workers back in 2016, and I got on that train, I guess, and that's how I became an election
I have
worker.
a question really quick, Deborah.
Yes.
Deborah, did you go through any like nonprofits that helped you file your application process or registration process? Or did you have to do it all yourself?
I responded to something online that was about getting involved with the vote, and they referred me to a website where there was training modules, because when I did finally apply at my local clerk, they referred me. They didn't like send my clerk a notice saying I was going to be applying, but they said, hey, here's your local precinct, go apply there. And I actually applied in a neighboring precinct, the one right next door, 4 miles away. But they did refer me to a website. I think it was a Secretary of State or a voter training website, because when I did apply with my county clerk, I had to show that I was trained. And most of that training is done in person, but you can complete it online. Every state, Secretary of State has those resources available online. So you can actually take that training, and then when you take the test with the county clerk, you can pass the test. Now, there is also a law that states that each precinct has to hire equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans to work their elections. And Michigan, I know, and it's been reported on, that Michigan now has a disparity of something like 20,000 more Democrats than they have Republicans, which is totally against the law. Totally against the law. And Michigan has also pushed through voter fraud, I'm certain, in the 2020 election, a new law that says that nobody can contest Michigan elections except for Michigan Secretary of State, which is so unconstitutional. I don't know how they push that through, but it's pushed through. So if we don't stop it before the fact, there's not going to be a way to stop it after the fact. Michigan has created a law. You cannot contest elections here, which is total BS, if you ask me.
So, Deborah, if there's anyone else here in the space that's listening that might be interested in signing up to be a poll worker, would you make yourself available to help them if they needed any tips on how to do that and what that process looks like?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because I think that's what needs to happen is, you know, people need to start kind of coming together and helping each other figure out, navigate that process. Since you've already done it, I'm sure that you would have a lot of valuable knowledge to those who might be interested in, participating and serving in that civic capacity. So yeah, that'd be great. All right, let's go ahead to Angela, and then we'll go to David. Go ahead. Or sorry, Jerry.
Hi. So a couple things on what the last speaker just mentioned about harms to immigrants. Again, I'll be honest with you. My second cousin, when he was immigrating here, he was 16 years old, and he had signed up for a driver's license. And when he turned 18, his ballot started arriving in the mail. And his mom freaked out, like, you can't do that. It's not legal, but the young man apparently didn't know that. And at his university courses, everybody was talking about voting. So he assumed he received a ballot, so he was allowed to use it. So again, to the point where we have a system that's actually sending out ballots to people who are ineligible to vote. Shouldn't we have some type of a requirement, like what she was just talking about, where Every post office should have something posted. Every drop box should have something posted. The elections day offices should have something posted. If you are ineligible to vote and you submit an application, you could be pursuant to federal prosecution or immediate deportation. Like, shouldn't it be posted? Just curious. And secondly, that conversation about the laws changing in California for voter working at the polls, I would love to figure out how to walk down that path and figure out how I might be able to work in that capacity.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Angela. All right. So let's go to Jared. Go ahead, Jared.
Hey guys, sorry. All right. So I just, thanks for the mic. I just wanted to correct the gentlewoman who was just speaking. I believe it was Deborah. So the law, that is a lie that says the law in Michigan that the governor Gretchen Whitmer signed, I believe just recently, says that you cannot contest or elections. That's not true. Basically it's, and I know this for sure because I just looked it up on the AP and I put it up in the comments. It basically says there has to be a good faith effort by the candidate himself in which there would be a recount. So let's say there was, the lights went off in the middle of the night, right? And the election was very close. There could be a recount. There could be some, contention there, but it's not saying itself you can't do that. I put it down there for you. But I just wanted to say, and then I'll drop down because, this is a space that's welcoming, but I think that for the most part, the voter rolls are clean, right? I mean, it's like the saying, if you continue to call a child stupid 15 times, they'll believe they're stupid. I believe this is what's happening here because you guys are trying to make a narrative that there's election fraud. In 2020, there isn't. Michigan, Arizona, the Commonwealth of Virginia, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania have said constantly there was no voter fraud in 2020. So why are you guys still making this a claim? I think if I was a MAGA surrogate, and I'm not, I'm a, Republicans for Harris surrogate come next week.
I'll tell you how, Jared. I'm an outsider who can't vote, right? Because I'm not a citizen. I'm still in process. I can't vote. And which makes it, I'm just a victim of the outcome of everyone's vote. And I saw that night. I saw all the things that go on. And that's plain as daylight. I'm the one that, I can't vote. I have no say. But I have to watch this nonsense and craziness happen. I can clearly say that. I have no dog in the game except the outcome, which affects my brother's future kids, which he's working on having. It affects your future. And that's all I really care about. If we can't be genuine and know that we need to have fair elections that everyone, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, can accept in the end, this is the goal, Jared. We're trying to get to that point where we could have elections that people can accept on all sides of the aisle, and we could get back to being Americans again. I'm sorry, Jared, but that hits home for me because I'm a person who can't vote. And I just went and checked my registration, making sure that somebody didn't register for me and try to vote on my behalf and screw me over. So, please be
Adam,
genuine
I think
with this.
I think that's a well-taken point.
The shenanigans that went on in 2020, as an outsider watching them, it's clear as daylight. Why would they block windows out? Why would they kick people out? Like when they went to go get their lunch, they couldn't come back into the precinct. They were told, no, you can't come back in. And they were workers. And then they covered the windows. That's craziness, Jared. Any logical person can look at that and say,
right, but Adam,
that's not right.
That's fair. But when
point
I
at
look
it and just say it's not right. And, it needs to be fixed.
No.
That's all we should all strive for.
Yeah, Adam, I think that's a well taken point. But when I look at these claims, for instance, in the state of Georgia, there was an allegation that suitcases were being passed down, and 2 election workers, Ruby
Really quick
Freeman.
though, Jared, before we get off onto
Yes,
another
ma'am.
one, I want to address what you said about, I think that's
Michigan?
Deborah's audio. Hold on. I want to address what you said about Michigan and you essentially kind of made it seem like there's nothing to worry about there, that essentially the law that was just passed there isn't going to stop recounts from happening. And you may be right in that it won't completely make it impossible. However, they've put up many roadblocks to make it very hard, if not impossible, to try to get a recount. So what they've done is they've essentially changed and made numerous provisions regulating election recounts. Notably, it says the law states a recount is not an investigation or an audit of the conduct of an election, and it does not assess the qualifications of electors participating in election or the manner of which ballots are applied for and issued to electors, as well as it's saying that it would prohibit the recounts conducted due to allegations of fraud, right, or for accounts that would not impact the election results. So they're trying to claim, okay, well, if we can try to say, oh, it might not impact the election results, we can shut down the ability to actually do that audit and that recount. When in reality, I think any type of encumbrance to the transparency of an election should be looked at as having impropriety. And for me, I think that our elections should try to be as transparent as possible. And if somebody wants to issue and request for that recount should be granted, no questions asked. And here's the reality. If it's a fair election and that person won fair and square, there should be no issue with doing a recount. Period. There should be no issue there. And it's saying like so that it doesn't encumber somebody's ability to take office, but our elections happen in November, and by the time that person even takes office, there's many, many months in between that. And so honestly, to me, it has the appearance of impropriety, the fact that you have Gretchen Whitmer and the Democrats pushing to try to create less transparency and
it was bipartisan, by the way. Yeah, I just want to know, I believe the bill was bipartisan, signed into law. But I also just do want to say that I'm gonna call a spade, because since the year before 2020, no one and their mother was talking about the elections. No one and their mother was claiming there was fraud, right?
That's incorrect. That's incorrect.
What?
So
are you
illegitimate president for Donald Trump?
He's too young to know better.
No, I'm talking about massively.
No,
all right?
No. Jared, how
guys,
old are you?
Can I finish? Can I finish, please?
But how old are you?
I'm 24 years young.
Okay, so you might not remember the Bernie Sanders issue when it was alleged that essentially Hillary Clinton stole it from Bernie Sanders in the Democrat primary, and the entire Democrat Party was up in arms. I was there as a reporter outside the DNC when they were storming the DNC while Hillary was in there speaking, climbing over the barriers and rioting.
And
Bush v. Gore. But I'm talking about after the litigation is done, common sense people say, they shake their hands and clap at it. And
they never litigated it.
I was going to say, please explain to us where the litigation's been allowed to occur. Let's talk about that.
So let's talk about what you were saying, Millie. The reason why that law was passed is because you now have people, crazy, unhinged people like, Carrie Lake in Arizona. She is still contesting the Arizona election.
That's because there was fraud.
She is a cultist. No, she isn't. They're doing this because she's spending so many resources contesting an election. If you even ask honest political observers, they would tell you that she was never going to win.
Jared, why would somebody spend so much money and so much resources contesting an election if they believed it was a fair election?
Because she wants to win, and because she was a TV news anchor, and she never ever thought that she would run, and she is crazy. She's unhinged.
You know how crazy that
is in her ear.
Can't you just disconnect this guy? He's wasting our time. He's so ill-informed.
Deborah, I'm just giving my opinion, and
No, you sound like you're crazy.
No, this is Angela. If you talk to people, like I honestly, like in 2 days, I'm voting for Kamala Harris. It's day one early voting here in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Well, that explains a lot.
Right? That's just my opinion, right?
Look,
Half of the country.
I think it's a little bit healthy to have some discussion, some differences in opinion, and allow these type of discussions to happen, because one, we know that this is the thinking that we see on the other side of the aisle in the Democrat Party. And these are the same talking points, and these are the same little regurgitated things that they say amongst each other. So when here we have a room of people who are educated on the topic and are able to actually refute those talking points and actually call out what it is that's
just because they shot just because they closed the blinds.
Because it's going to allow
closing the blinds is
those
not
who are following Jared to actually find out.
Come on, Jared, this isn't diligence space. We're going to be a little bit more cordial here. So I'm going to raise my hand, and you could raise yours as well.
Don't make me mute your ass.
The fact of the matter is, Tucker Carlson says it best. If it was true and there was no fraud, then they should have been able to defend themselves and dispute the evidence. But we were never allowed to bring forth the evidence. And that right there is a tragedy, and it is against the American people. We have the right to contest, and we have the right to be heard. And the fact that we were shut down on every single angle and made out to be these crazy people just because we were questioning something. A lot of us were silenced questioning something. Why are we being silenced? Again, they could have come out and said, we do see something weird going on here. So let's go back and let's look through this. We've got time. But they were too busy making sure Donald Trump didn't get in office because they knew what they had done. They knew they could not bring it forward because they knew that if they did, they wouldn't have shit to stand on, and the election would have been deemed invalid.
I'd like to question the Democrat primary, which elected Kamala Harris. Oh, wait, they didn't elect Kamala Harris.
That's inconsistent with the fact. I'm a former delegate, and I'd be happy to explain the process, but he is validly elected legally.
He? Who are you talking about? You mean Biden?
For the people?
This is called creative elections.
No, Kamala is legally and validly elected by the Democrats.
You guys must have learned. You guys must have
Is
learned
this
new
Jared
math.
2.0? I like.
No,
Jared
my name's
2.0.
Steven.
Steven, did you get to vote for Kamala Harris to be the nominee?
I'm actually
doesn't sound like a democracy to me. Is that the Democrat
I'm
Party?
happy to answer how the process works, but she is.
I understand how the process of fucking people over works. I've seen it several times in the government. DNC is pretty good at it. I don't say Democrats. I say DNC.
Okay, well, I'm just saying it's inconsistent with the facts and the laws that she is not validly or duly elected. She is.
No, but I'm just pointing out the fact that you didn't vote for her to be the nominee.
It is consistent with democracy.
That's sad. I feel bad
with democracy to just
Well, Millie, let's be clear. It's not
election.
consistent with a democratic republic. It might be consistent with a democratic socialistic government.
No, it is consistent with the Democratic Republic, actually. I'm happy to.
I just find it sad, bro. You're very disenfranchised and you don't even know.
Okay, well, I'm happy to explain the process if anybody would like to hear.
No, I understand the process, dude. It's not about the process. I just feel bad for you.
I mean, that's how.
Like honestly, from the bottom of my heart, your vote should count.
So can you explain why all the Bernie people were protesting in 2016 against the Democrat primary and them giving it Hillary?
I'm a former Bernie voter. I thought how 2016 went down was bad. So you wouldn't get any argument from me.
You know, he was the clear-cut front runner there.
Yes,
I could clearly say that he was definitely like everybody loved Bernie from the Democrat side.
But I can also
but
say
they threw him under the bus.
I can say at the same time though that Kamala Harris was duly elected.
So don't you think that there's
you guys are
wrong
asking
there?
questions? I would like to respond to Adam if I could, because I think when you guys are speaking among yourselves, as Trump supporters talking about the Democrat primary that does nothing for you guys.
No, I just have empathy.
So can I
Well,
can I
hold on,
answer the
Jared.
question?
Hold on, Jared. Steven just acknowledged, since he's old enough, he was around, he acknowledged that he was a Bernie person that was disenfranchised from
No, Millie, I'm talking about
that Democrat primary. And
I'm
so
talking about
he,
this Democrat
should
primary.
he have been allowed to contest that? Or do you think we shouldn't be allowed to contest any
So,
results?
Millie, I'm talking about the recent Democrat primary. You guys are still stuck on that no one voted for Kamala Harris. Okay?
You said it never occurred before. We were correcting
hold on
you,
a second.
sir.
If you ask any Democrat, and by the way, I think you guys should put this
He's
question
moving the
to
goalpost.
Steven. No,
So-
no, because if you
Hold on. I want you guys to take close attention to the tactics that are being used, the rhetoric, the logic, and we can call out the fallacies as they're happening, because I want to actually use it as a case in point to actually call out the exact tactics that are being used here with logical fallacies. And this is called moving the goalpost. So go ahead. Let's continue this educational I guess demonstration.
all right, thank you. And I'm okay. So I wanted to respond to Adam because I think that's a good question. I'm just saying I don't think it serves you guys any net positive when you guys among Trump supporters.
Did we ask your opinion?
Okay, well, you can take several seats, ma'am, and allow me to speak. So I don't think it serves any purpose when you guys explain the Democrat primary to Trump supporters. If you ask Democrats, if you ask liberals, they will tell you when they voted for Joe Biden, they voted for the incumbent Vice President Kamala Harris. So when you guys want to make this such a thing, no one voted for Kamala. It just showcases that you guys are scared of her. It goes back to the claim J.D. Vance said on a open mic, on a hot mic, that said you guys are scared that the nominee is Kamala Harris because you guys wanted a senile Joe Biden running against a crooked Donald Trump. So stop saying no one voted for Kamala Harris because
where did I say that, Jared?
There are
Jared, all I've said is that I feel
that's
bad
the narrative
for
from
Democrat
MAGA.
voters. They are victims of the DNC.
But how are they
You
victims?
know, like I have empathy.
How are we
like, from the
victims?
bottom
We
of
don't
my
get to
heart.
choose who our candidates
care.
are, dude. I am a former Bernie person who became the biggest Trump supporter because of what happened to us. We had everything laid out, and then they held people on buses, and they didn't let Bernie win. And now we have Donald Trump because of that. There was no Donald Trump without that. And so for me, this is the middle finger into the face of the establishment, because screw you guys. We said who we wanted, and you said, no, you get Hillary Clinton. And so that's why people are pissed off like me and will never vote Democratic.
Okay, so Vinny, we need a psychologist to explain how you voted for Bernie Sanders and now you're voting for Trump and knocking on doors
We
for him.
need a psychologist.
How does that
Because being pro-gun and closed border.
Hold on. Let's not all talk at the same time. I know that we need to kind of have a little bit of decorum here.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So I think we were at, it was Vinny and Jared going back and forth. Okay. So
sorry, Vinny, continue. I didn't mean to interrupt him.
Yeah.
No, you're good, man. All I'm trying to say is it makes sense why and then again, if you're sitting there as a Democrat and you said, I wanted Joe Biden, I'll take Kamala Harris for Joe Biden, to then try to pull the sleight of hand of, no, we voted for Kamala Harris. No, you didn't. I'm sorry, you guys. You might think that you did, and I can understand maybe it's not the most persuasive argument, but I'm pretty sure a lot more people would have probably rather had, I don't know, Pete Buttigieg or how about Kennedy, who wasn't even allowed to be in the primary. Like that's like you sit there and act like they're not disenfranchising people. The real election should be Trump versus Kennedy.
No. Yes, on paper, they did not. When they went to their precincts during the Democrat primary, which was, I believe, like a few weeks, they voted on paper for Joe Biden. Sure, I'll give you that. But what I'm saying, when Joe Biden came out that afternoon on Sunday and said, I'm endorsing Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, the people on the ground, the advisors, the DNC, the people who were knocking on doors for Joe Biden, they do not mind that Kamala Harris is now the nominee because they know that Kamala Harris She was, Joe Biden called her right-hand woman, and she was there until the dust settled. So I don't get why you guys make this an argument. Oh, Democrats are anti-democracy.
Did you ask every Democrat voter, Jared?
I can go get you. Hey, Adam, I'll do this. Adam, I'll go get you 5 polls, and I'll put them on the Jumbotron.
That's the point of having an election, though, is that's asking the voter what they want. So if you're forgoing that and you're just nominating Kamala Harris, then you're not asking the voters what they want. And I would actually wager that a large amount of the voters probably wanted RFK Jr. or maybe even somebody else, not Kamala Harris.
Well, let's ask
but
the
I guess we
resident
don't
Democrat on the stage. Let's ask the resident Democrat on the stage. Is he okay with Kamala Harris being
That's
the
like
nominee?
saying, let's run a poll. Why don't we ask the real people, the voters?
Pete Buttigieg, if everyone forgot, came out flying in the primary in 2020, and then they shut that all down and said that was all bullcrap too. Like, that's the thing, guys. Iowa got weird. They took what's it called? The Hillary replaced Bernie, and now you have freaking Kamala replace. Like, the people who the Democrats vote for never get to actually become the candidate. And so,
what about the man from Mar-a-Lago not having any debates with Nikki?
Who the hell let this fucking faggot up on my stage?
I'm not throwing Millie into the bus.
Thank you, Jen.
Right. And we're essentially allowing
Jared, get the
people
fuck
to
out of my room. You're
dispel-
not allowed here. I don't give a shit. Go suck a dick. That's all you're good at. Bye-bye. All right, back to the regularly scheduled program. Hey, guys.
Was getting nowhere. All it was doing is blackpilling us even more. We do have a lot of work to do. We've got less than 50 days to do it in. And if we don't get off our asses and get involved, and if you don't have at least 5 people that you're taking with you to the polls to vote, we're fucked.
Well, Kim, I'll say one thing. That conversation was, in a sense, productive, because if there are some on the fence Democrats.
I'm sorry, that is the worst actor on Twitter. And
Yeah,
I'm tired of entertaining
it showed
his
that we
ass.
care.
And I put out a thing last night that if you interrupt people, you're stupid or anything like that, you're going to be booted. And I'm not going to be giving you an answer. So blow up my DMs. I don't owe you an explanation. So I'm here to win. Obviously, you're not. And anybody else, if you're a Democrat, you are more than welcome up on this stage. If you're a paid actor, you can kiss my ass.
So what I was saying is that, definitely agree with Jen. In some in that regard, paid actors. It showed, like, any Democrat that might have been listening. We do care. Like, we want you to have fair elections. We want transparent elections for you as well, for your party, because it hasn't been panning out the way the voters of the Democrats. That's why I always refer DNC. I see Democrats as victims of the DNC, of the establishment, whether it be Liz Cheney rhinos, and now they're cheering her on, for God's sake. And Dick Cheney, Darth Vader. Come on, Democrats hated Dick Cheney forever. They called him a war criminal, and I call him a
Democrats
war criminal.
hated freaking Kamala Harris up until a month ago.
Yeah. It's sad. It really is. And I feel really bad for them. And I hope they come over to the America First movement here that's taking over the establishment Republicans. Understand, we don't like establishment Republicans. They've been getting knocked out one by one. And we are taking over this party. The American people are taking the republic back. And this is how, with Kennedy, with anybody that cares about the future of this country. All those
and
other
has
people,
common sense, and it cares about kids, and cares about, you name it.
Amen. And the monetary system, and all the things that have been getting taken advantage of. This isn't about Democrat, Republican. This is about America or the road to hell. And I'll yield there. Thank you.
Something, though, that I'd like to say, because something I wanted to comment on with Jared is these guys are running 3-card Monty games, including having the shill that stands there alongside them. The problem I'm having with this is that it's clear they're going to steal this. And I don't think, like with Jen's sentiment, I think we really need to approach this from the criminal side of what they're doing, not the rhetoric, the talking points, and all that, because they're going to steal it, period. So what are we going to do to stop it?
Well, the thing is, they're going to have to suffer with us. They're suffering right now under the 4 years. They're having to pay more. They're having to, struggle off of 6 figures being minimum wage, basically. Barely getting by, barely paying the bills, getting taxed up the yin yang. They're going to have to suffer as well. So, hey, don't forget, if we're going to suffer, you're suffering too. And, we're just going down the wrong path if you're going with Kamala Harris. I'm sorry.
Well, I think Millie's right though.
Wait, hold on a second. I'm getting DM'd. Hey, Stephen R., come off mic. I want to hear your voice.
I love it. Let's go.
Come on, Stephen R., get off mic, you little pussy. Jared, why are you in here on a burner? Jared, little Stephen R. down there? You're going to get booted too. Bye.
The real question is, why is he so overly persistent? I tell you what, give me some names, Jen. We've got really good private investigators that can do a little deep dive into these people.
Yeah, there's a
that
couple,
just
Gavin.
always come around.
There's a couple, and they don't stop.
Hey,
Yeah,
Jen,
because
I gotta jump off, but I just wanted to say, you just made me laugh harder today than I've laughed all week. I knew you weren't on mic. I knew you were going to light Jared up like a fucking Christmas tree. And the whole time I'm back on the highway driving to the next customer, I'm looking at Steven to see if he's got gay enough balls to speak up. Because you're going to wreck him too. But I think he's already dropped. So
yeah, I dropped his ass. I'm not. Listen, Diligent likes to have Jared up on stage. God bless him. Brian, God bless him. I'll debate him there. But like, our people deserve at least one space where Jared's not coming in here and derailing. Right, and I'm just sick of it.
People got to stop listening to these paid actors, these instigators, these whatever they call them in space, a space interrupter. Wreck them, folks.
Space invader.
Every time
there you go.
Talk, wreck them. Good job, Adam. Folks, have a great day. I'm gonna listen until I get to my next customer. See you soon.
Yeah, listen, I'm not opposed to having Democrats. I'm not opposed to dismantling people, right? But like, I was quietly listening in the background, and I couldn't take it anymore. So I let it go for as long as I could. I tried, Millie. I'm sorry.
I knew you were. I was like, when's she gonna come off? Like, what? She
No,
must be doing something.
see what I was trying to do here. Okay, when this punk comes into Diligent Spaces and these other people's spaces, they keep the flow bouncing back and forth so quickly that you're never actually allowed to fully dissect the logical fallacies and the rhetoric tactics that these guys use. So I thought this might be an opportunity, which Gavin actually has a lot of knowledge in the field of logic and rhetoric. And I actually asked him to come up here because the idea was I was going to allow him to, sitting aside as like a third party, watching these guys using their tactics. I was going to actually have Gavin call out the specific term that by definition, the rhetoric, the fallacies that they were using, so that we can actually look at it. And so when we're listening to these people in other spaces, disrupting other spaces, we can actually diagnose the exact fallacies that they're using. The people need to be able to know these terms and use these terms with precision in order to actually properly call out these pompous leftist asshats, okay? If we don't get to that point and we just get frustrated and tell them fuck off, which we can do that. But at the end of the day, it's actually even more powerful to so eloquently call out the logical fallacy and destroy them in front of their little pompous academia buddies. So that's what I was going to allow Gavin to do, is to teach us a lesson in logical fallacy. Gavin, maybe you can explain and tell people a little bit about the logical fallacies that you overheard them using and what that means and the definitions and so forth.
Well, the problem with someone like Jared is I would argue he's been trained in sophistry because he's able to dovetail one logical fallacy into the next with almost, ballet level grace, right? I mean, if you can actually go there with that. But the thing that I found interesting was that he was making an equivocation, right? Between how the electoral votes work and that Kamala was legitimately made the candidate. So there's an equivocation there. But then he's doing a distinction without a difference between what happened to Bernie Sanders and what happened to Biden. And so for me, it's amazing to watch someone skillfully use an equivocation and simultaneously a distinction without a difference to do a cartwheel over a formal contradiction.
So there are actual terms to describe the lies and the bullshit that these people spew. Okay. We, like regular people, we hear this and we're like, no, that just, we see what they're doing, but we don't have a word to describe it other than these guys are liars, they're full of it, whatever, right? But in actuality, there are terms that you can use to describe these chess moves that are being made on the board. And so that's why I was saying, Gavin, can you come in here and actually call out the logical fallacies? Like there are, maybe Gavin could explain, like hasty generalizations, false analogy, false cause, false authority, false dilemma, ad hominem, slippery slope, red herring, appeal to tradition. There's also appeals to authority. Like these are things that we should be able to know and utilize when we're having these discussions so that we can actually call out the tactics that are being used so that the viewer starts to become trained on recognizing the tactics that are being used to deceive them.
Okay, so how about this? Let's take some of the behaviors that we know Jared does, right? We can use today as an example. We can use any number of spaces that we freaking get terrorized by Jared in. And let's take some of the things that he was saying today and then give us what what that's called and what they're doing exactly. Like kind of pick it apart, because to the layman, it looks like this guy really believes what he's saying. Right. And that's what gets us so pumped up. Like we're like, how can you even like say that? Like, we know that not to be true. Like, we know you're not stupid. Like, that's the thing that, the left is filled with our scholars, our scientists, our doctors, all of these people that we trusted in and we thought were smart and wonderful. And they tell us that the sky is fucking green every day. So tell us what it is that he's doing so that we can
Okay, so I will go through and I'm going to list off the definition of these terms and the example that it gives, which I found a site here that has it beautifully laid out. And then maybe Gavin can kind of go into putting into context as well later, or feel free to jump in, Gavin, with anything you have to say on these.
Well, one thing that I think would be a fun thing to do, and I think Kim would actually enjoy this, is that all language is mathematical, right? Even lies have mathematical formulas. And
that's why I said he's using new math.
Well, but so like this is like the classic example, right? It's the if-then fallacy. So if it rains tonight, the ground will be wet. The ground is wet, therefore it rained. Is that true or false? It's false. It's false, because someone could have gone out with a hose and hosed down the ground, and that's why it's wet. So the true version is, if it rains, the ground will be wet. It rained, therefore the ground is wet. So notice what I did was I flipped the cause and effect to create the fallacy. And that's what these guys are doing. So what's kind of fun is to take people's arguments and do what's called a truth table, where you take all the premises and break the premises down to their truth values. This premise true. And then what happens is you take the premises and you arrange them into the argument structure, And that's what's called a well-formed, well, you're looking to see it's a well-formed formula. So what ends up happening is you don't even have to listen to the argument. The truth value of the premises and the arrangement of the premises is all you need to know whether the argument is true or false. So well-formed formulas are argumental forms that are always true, and fallacies of logic are formulas that are always false. And the thing that's stunning is all the arguments that we're getting about Trump, this, Democrats, why they're better. It's all fallacy, meaning there's inherent falsehoods embedded within their argument that have to be there in order for the argument to work. So I think it'd be fun to get into the habit of not fact checking, but fallacy checking. Because what that does is it guts their ability to continue to use those games, because you're not calling out the fact, you're calling out the form.
And that's the thing, like how many of these little, like, you know, some of these leftists are coming in with training in this, and they can use this to their own advantage and argue in a way that's hard for people to be able to address what they're doing and the tricks they're using. So people just get mad and you know, cuss at them or whatever, because we know that they're being dishonest in the way they're approaching this, but we can't actually dissect it and call out what's happening. And so that's the only reason why I thought, okay, well, let's entertain this. Let's use this as a study to kind of, allow Gavin to be up here and to actually sit here and dissect the fallacies that are happening. So I would like to take this opportunity to kind of go through just so that people can have a general understanding of what these are, so that maybe in the future when you're hearing them in 𝕩Space, or you're hearing them in diligence, or anyone's spaces in the future. And not only that, not only is it just used by people in these spaces, it's used by the lying mainstream media all the time. So there's, for example, one of them is an ad hominem, which a lot of us are familiar with. It's like a personalized attack. So it says an ad hominem fallacy is one that attempts to invalidate an opponent's position based on a personal trait or fact about that opponent rather than through logic. So an example says Catherine is a bad choice for mayor because she didn't grow up in this town. Right? So that's it's a ad hominem attack. They're not actually pointing out why she would be a bad choice. They're necessarily just doing a personalized attack.
So Trump is not a good candidate because he's a convicted felon, apparently, right?
Yes.
So that's
Exactly.
one of their ad hominems, right?
Yes. Or Trump is, like Trump would be a bad president because he's like Hitler. That's an ad hominem attack.
It's also a false equivalence.
Yes. And then there's a red herring. A red herring is an attempt to shift focus from the debate at hand by introducing an irrelevant point, which I would say they do that a lot, right? So losing a tooth can be scary, but have you heard about the tooth fairy, right? So, and we saw Kamala Harris do this a bunch in the debate, if you noticed. She would say, that she would make a false claim, and then she would shift the focus at the end of what she was saying to something else, like a personalized attack maybe on Trump, or a claim that would attack him personally, so that it would shift the focus so that he would only touch on that thing that she had towards the end, instead of actually the main thing she didn't want him to focus on. So that is the red herring. Okay? So we can start calling these things by definition rather than just, trying to describe it in our own words. A straw man is another one. Adam, really quick, I saw your hand shoot up. Did you want to say something to the red herring?
No, I'll let you carry on because you're doing a great job. I didn't want to interrupt.
Was the red herring her talking about his rallies? Because that's what threw him.
Yes.
I was just going to say about the good people on both sides thing that they make. And, we have American monuments, and, these are things part of American history. So there were good people out there. So where they try to frame that these, Federate Front, people or whatever, these actors, or maybe just bad people, were out there, doesn't mean that there wasn't good people on both sides. Some people, just didn't understand what these meant to American people, the culture. And then, people loved, American culture and American history because they made us the great country that we are and where we are on the world stage.
I mean, I think that we don't give enough credit to this country for actually abolishing slavery. Like, we stopped it. And that's where we need to say, wait a minute. I get it. There were slave owners. There were slave owners when everybody owned slaves, and nobody really realized that it was a bad thing to do. It was just there'd been slaves forever.
Tim,
So
I'm
the
Middle
fact that we
Eastern.
freed 'em.
There were
I'm
black
Middle Eastern and
slave owners too.
Exactly. So we get caught up in this argument of the whole slavery thing, and it's like, get over it. We freed the slaves. Unless you want to just keep us in this slavery argument.
We
So
should
this is the perfect
actually
example,
we should use the slavery arguments. It leads to a slippery slope, because are we going to go back? How far back do we go for the victimization? Do we go back to our, if you want to go with evolution, are we going to go back to marmoset disputes, inter-marmosetal disputes?
So this is
You know
the
what I mean?
perfect example of a red herring, because even us talking about it, we got off of the debate, the focus on what we were talking about. So there's a good example of that. So the
Sorry.
next one is it is what it is. A straw man. Okay. A straw man argument is one that argues against a hyperbolic, inaccurate version of the opposition rather than their actual argument.
He's literally Hitler.
So Aaron thinks we need to stop using all plastics right now to save the planet from climate change. Wow, I love that they use that as the example. That's funny. Yeah, so that's basically we need to stop using all plastics to save the planet from climate change, right? So that's a straw man. And equivocation, which Gavin has talked about over
False
and over.
dilemma.
And
What's crazy
equivocation.
is, you have to actually pull it apart.
Let me read the definition, because I'm sure many people in this space might not know what an equivocation is. An equivocation is a statement crafted to mislead or confuse readers or listeners by using multiple meanings or interpretations of a word, or simply through unclear phrasing. So an example is, while I have a clear plan for the campus budget that accounts for every dollar spent, my opponent simply wants to throw money at special interest projects.
I'm seeing kind of a propaganda aspect being added to the examples, but I digress.
So what would be a direct example of what Jared did? Because I'm sure he performs all of these with grace.
No, they're woven into each other. So you actually have to sit there, pull all the premises apart, and show the multiple arguments that are simultaneously happening. Because that's how he's hiding the contradiction. Contradiction is if I say in one sentence that something's both good and bad, right? But if I spread it out over several paragraphs, it'll be harder to catch. And that's where the other fallacies is. You can almost think of a fallacy as a way of passing a lie along so that it maintains its effectiveness.
So what would be an example you could give of an equivocation, Gavin?
Oh man, put me on the spot. All of Trump's cases were heard. Therefore, because all of Trump's let me do this right. All votes must count. It's the inherent equivocation is both legitimate and illegitimate votes must count. So when you say all votes must be counted, you're also saying all votes, regardless of their legitimacy, must be counted. So it's an assumed equivocation.
But with the standing thing, so with the court cases, that's a few of them rolled into one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I hesitated on it. So
right. I want to hear that one, guys. I want to hear, like, because that's the one that fires me up the most.
Basically, yeah. So the situation was the cases were thrown out because the court argued they didn't have standing. So what that means is there's not an actual victim or injured party making the claim, right? Because in order to have court jurisdiction, you have to have jurisdiction over the body, jurisdiction over the claim, and jurisdiction over the right for the matter to be heard. And so if you actually look, what the fallacy is that the court cases met all the jurisdictional needs and were thrown out. Not that the cases did not meet the jurisdictional needs and were thrown out.
I would say the false equivalency is when they're basically saying because the case was thrown out, therefore that's proof that there was no election fraud.
There you go. That's false cause. Exactly.
Because you can't equate the two because it was thrown out because they didn't have standing due to little technicalities, and they didn't ever even get to the meat of the subject material. The evidence material was never even looked at. So they never even looked at, the judges never even looked at whether or not there was evidence of election fraud. They threw it out based on a technicality before the fact, based on a lack of a physical like victim or something. So
there's 330 million physical victims.
Right, but for whatever reason, there's technicalities the judges and everyone has. So the thing that you see these leftists do, like Jared, when they come in, they're making a false equivocation. Would that be the right term, Gavin?
He's a convicted felon.
But I'm saying the way they're saying that therefore there was no fraud because the cases were thrown out.
That's absolutely mixing cause and effect. Because the cases were thrown out, therefore there was no election fraud. When the fallacy is all cases thrown out have no merit. When cases oftentimes are thrown out because there was a claim upon which relief couldn't be granted, it doesn't mean it's meritless. It means the claim did not exhaust all remedy.
And so therefore, okay, so there's 60 different cases, right? Or however many it was in the 60s. And the argument is, right, that there can't be 60 corrupted judges, right? So, but again, if one of them doesn't meet the jurisdiction and gets thrown out on standing, they all pretty much have the same setup.
Same flaw.
Okay, that they all had the same flaw. So in that case, it's like, oh my God.
I'm going to blow your mind. You know what the profession?
The way it was filed.
Well, what I was going to say is there's actually a group, there's an association even of a professional group of people who are masters of logical fallacies. Do you know what the name of that association is? The Bar Association.
Just going to say the Bar Association.
Because if you think about it, is winning a case about truth and falsehood, or is it about who wins, who loses? And that's why a lot of people lose court cases, because they think it's about the truth of the matter when it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with whether or not the lawyer is able to put you in a box and whether or not your lawyer is able to keep you out of a box. So it's a game. And what's the game they're playing? Logic. So one of the easiest ways I found in court to just when you are honestly a victim of the court, the irony is that all they have are fallacies. So you can sit there and pluck their fallacies off one at a time to keep them from being able to put you in that box.
So in the same way, if we all start to study and learn these terms and what they mean and how these logical fallacies are used, we can dissect them on the spot, and therefore we can disarm our opponent immediately from being able to use them and weaponize them to deceive people.
Especially if you went even further and took their argument, wrote it out, broke it down into its prepositions, then did the truth tables on the prepositions, then brought in the logical forms and do the equation. And what you've done by publishing that fallacy is you've destroyed their ability to use that, because you can just circle back. In fact, you could even give it a name, like the Jared fallacy, right? Like the Krastenstein fallacy. You could basically find which line of fallacious thinking these guys like to use, quantify it, and give it a name.
There you go, right? So here's another one, slippery slope. So with a slippery slope fallacy, the arguer claims a specific series of events will follow one starting point, typically with no supporting evidence for this chain of events. So if we make an exception for Bajal's service dog, then other people will want to bring their dogs. Then everybody will bring their dog. And before you know it, our restaurant will be overrun with dogs. Their slobber, their hair, and all the noise they make, and nobody will want to eat here anymore. So that's an example of a slippery slope. So one example I would say is the slippery slope is if we enact voter ID law, no one's going to be able to, all these people are going to be disenfranchised by not being able to vote, because all these poor people are not going to be able to get IDs, and they're not going to vote, and it's going to create,
And what's
gerrymandering.
what's the false premise? Brown people don't know how to get IDs.
It's disgusting.
But notice when you notice when you break the fallacy apart and pull out what the assumptions are, which are also prepositions, you actually see their argument is hinged on very ugly reasoning. And that's really what needs to be pulled out. That's why I like that old classic video where the guy goes around asking minorities if they have issues getting IDs, and they're like, no. And then they go ask all these liberal white people, and they just sound like just disturbing.
Exactly.
I mean, you need an ID to get everything in this country.
Exactly. Like to even get a phone.
Even my 14-year-old. I mean, he's so thankful that he's got a passport now, so that he has at least an ID.
So I think that Jen's got to get going here soon. So I don't think we're going to be able to make it through all of these, but I highly suggest you look it up. Maybe we'll do another space. I think that I'm going to host another space with Gavin on this topic.
Do a space
go ahead, Gavin. Sorry.
Do a space where you have some of their favorite fallacies.
I mean, we've got plenty of recordings of Jared, if anybody wants to go back and grab some of them.
Yeah, and then what we do is we could just do a whole space of breaking it down and cutting it up into little pieces. And here's this part. And what ends up happening is you come away understanding their intention. Because, see, a lot of people, like you said, Kim, some people think Jared honestly believes what he's saying. Well, then why is it mathematically calculated to only be bullshit? Like, notice he's not actually saying anything that's true unless it's a truthful statement to support a fallacy.
All right, Millie, real quick. I have recording of Jared and Brian, not Brian Crash.
Can you, Adam, if you're playing what I don't. Okay? Like, no, I don't. When people get in spaces and talk shit about me, I don't want like that played again for the world when they didn't record it. Like, that's fucked up.
Okay, so real quick before we do close it out, because I know you got to go, Jen. I did put up in the nest what Alvin from Courage is a Habit wrote up about Jared and Brian, the space invaders, as he calls them. You know, they talk a lot about media literacy. They talk a lot about language oh gosh, contamination. So this falls right into line with a lot of that stuff. So there's some good terms in there as well. And Millie and Gavin, I'd really love for us to do a space on this topic and really break it down for people so that we can really be armed with this information, because I think that we allow it to get us off course. And that's, we can't do that. We can't afford it.
Exactly. So I think that's what I'll be doing. Maybe I'll go down there in the basement and we'll whip out the chalkboard, or we've got a blackboard actually, and we'll do some truth tables, and we'll just literally write out the fallacies, and we'll dissect the fallacies that are being used in the spaces by some of these people who we believe are bad actors. And I think that it's going to help us to be able to know how to combat it head on. And overall, you can do this as well. You can use this to dissect newspapers, articles, mainstream media. You can use it to dissect any of these things and be able to get to the root of what's actually being said and what's true and what's fake news. So yeah, thank you, Jen, so much for hosting this space. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out here.
Would that be okay if I asked you guys a quick question before we close out? If that's okay. If not, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I wanted
Yeah,
one
go ahead.
too, real quick.
Okay, thank you. I'm a huge fan of Jen and her page, dude. Her passion for her belief system is so intoxicating. Jen, you are so fucking awesome. Thank you for allowing me to be a speaker in your space, dude. Your passion for your belief system in America it's really awesome, and I wish people had a heart like yours, dude. And Millie, I'm also